Hello, third and fourth graders. Happy Tuesday. Today in Bible, we're going to quick review what we learned yesterday. So you guys did a great job of giving me little videos of what you learned. I loved watching those. Keep up the great work. We talked about God giving a promise to Abraham and Sarah that in 1 year, Sarah would have a baby. And what did she do? She laughed, right? She was like, I don't believe that God can do that. But God, when he makes a promise, he keeps his promises. So we're gonna see 1 year from then. We also learned about Lot and some of the bad choices he was making and what happened to the city of Sodom and Gomorrah and his wife. So they are actually going to be not in our story for a while. We're going to turn mainly to Abraham and Sarah and be watching how God keeps his promises to Abraham. So without further ado, we are in Genesis chapter 21, and I'm just going to read straight out of the Bible, and we're going to kind of watch the scene come out, and we'll see what happens. So Genesis 21 verse 1. Now the Lord was gracious to Sarah. He gave grace to her. Side note, grace means giving someone something that they don't deserve. So giving them something that they don't deserve means God was giving Sarah a son, something that she did not deserve. Sarah had made mistakes. She had laughed at God, but God was gracious to Sarah, as he had said, and the Lord did for Sarah what he had promised. Again, we see God keeps his promises. So, verse 2, Sarah became pregnant and bore a son to Abraham in his old age, at the very time God had promised him. Abraham gave the name Isaac to the son Sarah bore. There's little baby Isaac, adorable, right? To the son Sarah bore him. When his son Isaac was 8 days old, Abraham circumcised him as God commanded him. So one of the signs that Abraham's family was separate and belonged to God was circumcision. Now, Abraham was 100 years old when his son Isaac was born to him. Wow, I am really old. Got a lot of gray hair. Can you imagine if when you were born your dad was 100 years old? That'd be crazy. Now, Sarah said, God has brought me laughter, and everyone who hears about this will laugh with me. And she added, who would have said to Abraham that Sarah would nurse children? Yet I have borne him a son in his old age. She just can't believe it. She is amazed. Now, how do you think these people feel? Hagar and Ishmael. If you were Hagar and Ishmael, how do you think that you would feel? You thought you were special and had Abraham's only son, and all of a sudden in comes the new kid, and he is now their favorite, the child of the promise. And you might be worried. I know Hagar might be thinking, I know, God, that you promised that you would take care of me and all this stuff, but how are you going to take care of me when Isaac is here now? What are you really going to bless Ishmael? She might be doubting God a little bit. So let's continue on. This section, so I just read you the birth of Isaac. Now we're going to be talking about Hagar and Ishmael. So verse 8, the child grew and was weaned, and on the day Isaac was weaned, which means he's eating solid food, Abraham held a great feast. Yeah, lots of great food that I can eat now. He had a great feast, but Sarah saw that the son of Hagar, the Egyptian, had born to Abraham was mocking. Isaac, he's the child of promise. You're so fancy, baby. Oh, I feel terrible. You're being mean to me. Okay, Sarah saw this happening. And she said to Abraham, where was I? Get rid of that slave woman and her son, for that woman's son will never share in the inheritance with my son Isaac. Wow, Sarah can be really mean. Even though God had been gracious and given promises, Sarah sees Ishmael being unkind, and instead of handling it, she tells Abraham to send Hagar and Ishmael away. The matter distressed Abraham greatly because it concerned his son. See, Abraham, even though Ishmael was not being nice, he still loved Ishmael because Ishmael was his son. But God said to him, "Do not be so distressed about the boy and your slave woman. Listen to whatever Sarah tells you, because it is through Isaac that your offspring will be reckoned. I will make the son of the slave into a nation also, but he is your offspring, because he is your offspring." So a little translation for you. Sarah goes and complains to Abraham, and Abraham's like, "What do I do?" He loves Ishmael and doesn't want to send him away, but he knows that this is the son that God promised them. Isaac is the one whom God will fulfill all of these great things, making him a great nation, and blessing all these people. Now, God tells Abraham, "Abraham, it's okay. I will look after Hagar and Ishmael. Do what Sarah said." So, early the next morning, Abraham took some food and a skin of water and gave them to Hagar. "Here you go." He set them on her shoulders and then sent her off with the boy. "Goodbye. Stay safe." He set them off she went on her way and wandered in the desert of Beersheba. So she is in the desert of Beersheba. Now, I don't know if you guys have ever been to the desert before, but I hear it's pretty hot and not much water is there. Now, when the water in the skin was gone, she put the boy under one of the bushes. So she put Ishmael in the shade. She put him in the shade. Then she went off and sat down about a bow shot away. So she went a little bit away from her son. About a bow shot away, and she thought, "I cannot watch the boy die." And as she sat there, she began to sob. She knew that Ishmael would die. They had nowhere to go. God heard the boy crying, because remember, the Lord hears. And the angel of God called to Hagar from heaven and said to her, "What is the matter, Hagar? Do not be afraid. God has heard the boy crying as he lies there. Lift the boy up and take him by the hand, for I will make him into a great nation." Again, God says his promise to Hagar. God doesn't just give promises to Abraham. He gives them also to Hagar. This slave woman who had been sent off, he still keeps his promises to her. Then God opened her eyes, and she saw a well of water. Wow. So she went and filled the skin. Water, hallelujah. She gets her little container, her skin that has water in it, fills it up with water, and gave the boy a drink. "Here, honey, take a drink, take a drink." God was with the boy as he grew up. He's with all of us, right? He was with Ishmael as he grew up. He lived in the desert and became an archer, someone with a bow and arrow. While he was living in the desert of Paran, his mother got him a wife from Egypt. And that begins the making of Ishmael into a great nation. All right, now we got to talk about what we learned with all of this. First of all, God keeps his promises. God kept his promise to Abraham and Sarah by giving them their son Isaac. And God also kept his promise to Hagar by providing water for her son so he would not die. And then he got married and was starting to become a great nation. Okay? So God keeps not just his promises to his chosen people, to the good Abraham people. He keeps any promises. All of his promises God keeps. We also see that God is gracious. It says right here in the first verse, "Now the Lord was gracious to Sarah." Sarah had doubted God. She thought, "There's no way, I'm way too old." And even though she didn't deserve to have a son, God gave her a son. And grace is when you get something that you don't deserve. Okay? And then finally, we learn that God sees and cares. And I could also add, he hears. He heard Ishmael crying. He saw them in distress, and he cared about Hagar and Ishmael. Okay? So God sees and cares. Even when things are going super duper bad, he sees you and he cares about you. And that, my friends, is a wrap. We have made it through Tuesday Bible, and I cannot wait to hear you tell me the story back to me. See you guys.